Hello, my name is Kevin Powell, and I've created this course, Modern CSS Fundamentals, to help you fall in love with CSS. And if I can't get you to fall in love with it through this course, I'm hoping to at least help you be a little bit less frustrated with it. In this course, we're starting with the foundational skills like learning how selectors work and the box model, before moving on to exploring the mindset that helps you work with CSS instead of fighting against it. From there, we'll dive into the most useful parts of both Grid and Flexbox that you need to create responsive websites, and also dive into positioning while we're at it. Lastly, we explore dealing with user interaction and transitions and animations to help your sites feel great. With your frustrations of CSS now gone, go out and write your CSS with confidence. Classes are when you have a class on an element. We have our page header, article header, things like this. And this is beneficial because sometimes we don't want to select every single paragraph. Let's come back and look at our design again. Page 1. If you take a close look at them, the first paragraph is larger than the other paragraphs. So there's no way with an element selector to say that only this one paragraph should be larger. And on the second page, there's 2 paragraphs that should actually be larger. So I don't have a way of doing that with an element selector. Element selectors are all of that element, or that's it. There's nothing else we can do with that. So I can come on my index, and I can give this a class. Is equal to, and I'm going to call it lead. You can come in with a different name. This is a typography term. The first paragraph in like a newspaper, magazine, they're often the lead paragraph. They're a larger font size. If you're coming from more of a utility class, it could be large text, other things like that. We're going to talk more about naming as we go through things. Coming up with good names is hard. Just give it something descriptive that makes sense, that does what you're telling it to do. So for me, lead makes sense. Other people might look at it and not like that class name. But I can do that, dot lead, and then come in with a font size declaration. We're going to talk a lot more about things. We can have a font size here. The default font size in the browser for paragraphs is 16 pixels. Anything bigger than that would work. So I can come in, let's say, with 21 pixels. I'm not going to suggest pixels in general, but we'll do this for now until we learn a bit more about things. I can set that to there and then jump back over to my project. And I'm on the second page, so let's jump back to the home page. I'm going to zoom out a little bit on that page for now. And now we can see that this paragraph here is bigger than the other ones. And if I can come in with a different size there, it gets even bigger. With whatever reason, if I wanted it to be smaller, I could make it smaller. And the lead is only impacting that one paragraph. And I mentioned the second one. I also want these 2 paragraphs to be larger as well. So that just means now I can reuse that existing class that I've already created, which is the benefit of classes, by saying this has a class of lead as well. And this one, because it's the first 2 classes, or first 2 paragraphs in this case, both have the lead. And we can see those have gotten bigger. Other common use cases for using classes is when you have different elements that you need to look the same. So buttons are a very classic example of this. You'll have links and buttons that both should look like a button. Some people don't like that pattern, but it's part of the web now. It's pretty globally used. So then I can just use the same class on 2 different elements to get them to look the same. And we've already applied that in our project. The last one is an ID selector, which is an ID is equal to, and then we use it the same way as a class, but instead of a dot at the beginning of it, we do a hashtag at the beginning of it to select that selector, and that's a shortcut for an ID. So we do a display grid. We're changing into a grid layout mode. It's the most underwhelming declaration you'll ever do. Nothing happens. Something has happened. Something very important has happened, but it doesn't actually change the way anything looks on the screen. So it feels a little bit disappointing at first, especially if you compare it to Flex, where stuff just starts moving around. Really important, and I'm going to talk more about the implications of this in a minute, but when we do a display of grid, on the outside, the element's still a block level element. It's the inside that's changed. So it's still stacking the same way. The other stuff's before it, other stuff's after it. It is block on the outside. Grid is what we call an inner display value. So we've changed what's happening in the middle, and these have actually turned into grid items over here. And there's a few important things with that. But we're going to start with the there's 2 properties that you really need to know. Well, 3, because you display grid. Then there's the grid template columns. You've got to spell columns, which, there we go. And when you do a grid template columns, you just write out what you want for your columns, all using different length units. Any length unit is valid. Let's just come in with the easy ones, 200 pixels, 200 pixels as a simple example. I've created 2 columns, and we can see the content has turned into this 2x2 grid right there. So first one down, we know how to create columns. A lot more we can do with this, but we've created 2 columns, so it's a good start. The other one that you're going to use a lot is gap. Let's just say 16 pixels. Put space between them. Gap is the cool version of margins because we don't have to worry about space being added outside of the elements. It only adds space between the siblings. So between 1 and 2, it will put that space. Between these ones, it puts the space. Here we're getting it, but we're not getting any space added to the outside. We can even add, let's just put a border on here. 10 pixels solid. And it will be black because the text color is black. So we can see we're not adding any extra space. We don't have to worry about removing margins. Don't put margins on grid or flex items. Just let them be and use gap to create your spacing. It's going to make your life a lot easier. Now I can make more columns. Let's say we do 100 pixels over here. We get a third column, and it's just going to squeeze on over there, and we get a third column. It's smaller because I said it's 100 pixels in size. One problem with grid is, let's do 200 and 200. Now I have 4 columns, but you'll notice they're overflowing out the side. Shoots on out. Because the grid is listening to what I'm telling it to do. This would be like saying width 1,000 pixels. The element will become 1,000 pixels. So we do have to be really careful when you're declaring columns that you don't inadvertently create some overflow by having sizes that force the browser to overflow. The same way you don't want to set a width on something. So there we go. We get 4 columns though, which is kind of cool. But if I do my page header and I give this a position sticky instead of a position fixed, and I say the top is 0, like we did before, or actually, first of all, without doing anything else, just the position sticky, nothing has changed this time. It didn't shrink down. It didn't get pulled out of the flow. It's behaving exactly as it did before. So it's easier to deal with in a sense because of that. And as soon as I tell it where it should stick, the content doesn't go underneath. I don't have to add padding to my body, and it sticks to the top of the viewport. So it feels a lot like position fixed does, especially if it's the first element on your page. It feels exactly like what position fixed is. But there are some differences with what position sticky is. So let's go dive into those. Here's another navigation. This is sort of a common pattern. You can't really read the text here, but you have a big hero area and your navigation's underneath it. And as you're scrolling down, this has a position sticky, top 0. Let's go find that actually. Intro, nav, top there. Oh, I haven't done it yet. We have a position sticky. So if I go down, normally it just scrolls off. If I add my position sticky with the top of 0, now when it reaches the top of 0, it sticks. So it only is pulled out of the flow once it gets to the place where you told it to stick to. The rest of the time it stays in flow and all the elements still see it. So it doesn't lose, nothing goes underneath until that point where it sticks here. One question I often get with this is, can we know when it sticks? Because you have those nav bars that change once they stick. It's in the works. I don't know if any browser supports it yet, but we are getting a query for the scroll state things, and there's like a stuck on stuck thing that's coming. So eventually we'll be able to. Right now, there's nothing we can do for that though. But nice and cool, works really well. It's super easy to do, and it's, I think, a pretty fun use case of position sticky. However, there are some limitations to position sticky that we really need to be aware of. And the easiest way to compare them is to compare a sticky box to a fixed box. So, well, this one's display fixed, this one's display sticky. Position fixed, position sticky. I think I mentioned earlier on one of the biggest typos I make is a display of absolute. Turns out it's when I'm speaking as well. Position fixed, position sticky. The fixed one, first of all, is always fixed. So it's not waiting for my browser to go anywhere. It's fixed to that place. The sticky one waits until it gets to where I told it to, which was the 0 at the top. So it waits, it eventually sticks. My sticky box is inside of something else. It's nested inside of this area. A sticky cannot escape outside of its parent, which means that as we scroll down, it eventually will scroll off with the element that it's inside of. So that's a really important difference. You can see that's a pretty cool behavior in a sense. I didn't, like, 2 lines of code and you can get that to happen is kind of mind-blowing. I remember when sticky first came out, it was very exciting. It also might seem a little bit weird that happens. The fix just pulls out of the flow, stays there. Sticky all of a sudden, it's disappearing at times, can feel a little bit strange. I just want it to stay stuck. It's not how it works. It's one of the side effects of it. It cannot escape outside of its parent. However, that does mean we can do some cool things with it too. So here, I have a display grid, 2 columns. I have a section. Each section is my H2, which is my title. And then the second one is the column of text that's just shooting down the side. And I've repeated that over and over again. You can see going all the way down. Each one of those sections is the 2 columns, which is why this is on the left side, this is on the right side. Also, an interesting use case where I've used different values. We're not repeating, we're not doing something else. I did a small size for that and a 1FR on that side. So that side can adjust, whereas I know my title will always just stay in this small space. And on the title, I can say it's position sticky. And I gave it a top of 1 because I don't want it to touch the top. I want it to stay a little bit off. And you might have seen things like this on the web before. I'm trying to deselect it. There we go. While I scroll down, it will stick. But it can't leave the parent. And the parent is ending with this paragraph. So then we get section 2. And then section 3. And you have your titles that can scroll down with you and follow you as you're going down.